Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I got a phone call in the middle of the video. No matter what I do, they seem to come through. Anyway, so she stopped speaking to me entirely and continued to people who we both knew to claim to be pregnant with my child for months. I later found out, thanks to the girl that I was falling in love with and later dated, that there were lots of negative pregnancy tests and no positives. Oh, by the way, the girl I keep talking about who I was in love with in the time is Brutus's long-lost mommy. And under slightly different circumstances, things probably could have been happy together, but I'm glad that she found someone else and is living a happy life now. Things worked out for the best, I think. Anyway, though, thanks to her, I found out about the negative pregnancy tests and how on her way up to her first ultrasound, which she decided to have in a city 2 hours away for some godforsaken reason, she claimed she must have had a miscarriage in the car because the ultrasound showed no signs of a pregnancy, but she knows she was pregnant. So in other words, from my perspective at least, the woman who date raped me and took advantage of me when I was younger, but made it enough fun that I didn't complain, accused me of being, I'm going to have to jump here, accused me of raping her and of being pregnant with my child, and it all turned out to be a complete farce that just made my life hell for 5 months as I was trying to figure things out with a girl that I was in love with, but, well, wanted to convince I wasn't worth dating. It's a long story. I had a lot less self-worth back then than I do now. The next story I'm going to tell is, well, actually took place at the same party house. Come on, Brutes. Sorry, I'm going to turn around here. He's stuck up on the log. You can do it! Anyway, though, there was a girl who had offered to give me a massage. I was known for giving some of my friends massages at this house. My girlfriend at the time didn't mind. This was actually, well, at the time I was known for giving massages. I had a girlfriend who didn't mind. At this point in time, I was single. Just to be clear, I was thinking back and had details wrong there for a second. It's been, well, more than a decade. Anyway, so she had gone to masseuse school and was, professionally trained and offered to give me a massage. I have a hard time turning this down, especially when it's from a cute girl. After a couple of massages, we ended up making out a couple of times, cuddling together while watching the film Rent, and then really never speaking again. It was just, a bit of fun, and it never went any further than that. Until about 1.5 years later, when I was dating a girl who I had no idea knew the massage girl, but it turns out they had been best friends for many years and remain friends now, and she accused me of raping her. Now, we had never had sex, and I later found out that this girl is diagnosed as a pathological liar, though I guess the source I got that from, now that I think back on it, isn't necessarily the most reliable, but I have reasons to believe that this was the case. So, I got that news at a rather awkward moment as well. That's a story for another day. That one's too long to include in this video, but it certainly made things awkward for a time with my new girlfriend, who fortunately believed me over her old friend when I told the story. especially given that she knew her friend to be a long-term liar. That worked in my favor. But in the Me Too era, with either of these accusations, if one of these girls went on social media and, hey, maybe they have and it just hasn't gone back to me yet, then given the number of people who hashtag believe women, I would most likely be in some trouble, at least socially, for things that I never did, and events that, looking back, well, I never saw it worth taking anyone to court or, going any further than telling mutual friends about it to protect myself socially. I just never took things farther than that and still wouldn't, hence why there are no names in this story. But I mean, I certainly could have, and with a couple of well-placed lies and it being my word versus theirs, though there is text evidence of the one case at least, potentially, it could be really bad for me. Or for them. And, when I was in high school, I was friends with a guy, and the whole school basically hated him. I'd been homeschooled up until high school. They had all gone to middle school together, and no one would really ever tell me why. They, said it had to do with this one girl's story, and she didn't want to tell it to me because we weren't close enough friends, and no one else wanted to tell it to me because it was her story, and he told me it wasn't as big a deal as everyone said, and they were blowing it out of proportions, and, well, without more details, I just firmly believed, and still do, and innocent until proven guilty, or at the very least until I've been given some evidence. But as it turned out, it was, well, fairly well known around the school that he had attempted to force himself on her. I didn't know this until years after we'd stopped being friends for completely separate reasons, or I probably wouldn't have been as close to one of my closest friends in high school, really. So, I know events like this do happen, that girls are sometimes afraid to speak out about it, even though, she had in middle school, but that the story doesn't always get around to all of the people it should. He's a woke male feminist now, to, I'm sure, nobody's surprise. That's a cool stump. So, I've certainly got more stories than this. I've had family members who've had experiences. I've had a couple more experiences I could tell you about that were more than questionable. The first girl I ever slept with made me feel like I basically had no choice, or she wouldn't believe that I loved her, and she's not the only girl to have played that card on me. But while it might just be the area I've lived in, I've definitely seen this predatory behavior a bit more from women than men, though it has definitely gone both directions. Really, I think that has a lot to do with growing up in the type of liberal area that I did. I don't mean leftist, I mean liberal, and it's a bit of both, but it's one of the ones that's retained the original meaning, at least for most of the people in the area. And anyway, socially speaking across America, I think it's probably a lot closer to even than people would like to think. That people are often predatory on other people. That the sexes, given that we do have some differences, might be predatory in slightly different ways that register different socially to each other, but that these false accusations can be incredibly damaging. I got off light every time. I was lucky, and some of my defense was documented, and, well, I can be fairly persuasive when I want to be. Not everyone is thus blessed. So, remember, the next time you hear a story, that there's a reason dating back thousands of years that people believe in the concept of innocent until proven guilty. It's an important cornerstone of basically any legal code worth speaking of. And, well, it's something that, especially because of my personal experiences and the experiences of others. I mean, I saw a friend in high school who wasn't so lucky, who a girl had had sex with him, and willingly, and then had accused him of raping her when she got mad at him about a week later, and got him sent to prison until she was caught bragging around the cafeteria about what she'd done to him, and they let him go. So, I mean, I've personally seen someone who was less lucky than me and still luckier than he could have been. Because, if she'd kept her... Oh, shit. Oh! There's a hill there. Okay. Guess no further that way for now. I'm stuck in the blackberries. Give me one moment. But if she'd kept her mouth shut... he could still be in jail. I mean, he's the type of person to get into fights, which is a good way to get your sentence extended. He's not one to back down. It could have been very problematic now that I stopped to think about it. So, I'm not saying that we should take all accusations with a grain of salt, because I think there are times when there's enough surrounding evidence to make a case socially immediately before more evidence emerges, but these are very rare, few and far in between, and most of the accusations we see are things where we should really stop and wait until the evidence emerges before making a lot of assumptions. Now, when it comes to someone rich and powerful, it can be hard to get proper justice if someone really has done these things. This is why it's important to come forward when you have the evidence, not 20 or 30 years later. And I know it can be hard, especially when you're emotional about a situation that recently happened. I mean, when these things happened to me, I never went forward. But I also thought about how they impacted and affected me, and decided logically not to. Something which I've never regretted and don't intend to go back on 20, 30 years later if I decide that these people need to be punished. That's just not something I can imagine myself doing. But hey, people change. In another decade, when it's been 30 years from some of these events, who knows? But personally, I think coming out when you know you have no evidence, when you've sat on to an allegation for decades in an attempt to ruin somebody's life, when, well, clearly you've changed as a person since you were unwilling to come out with the allegations before but are willing now. So, by this point in time, they've likely changed as a person too. Even if the allegations are true, it just seems ridiculous. But hey, as someone who can argue that I've been Me Too'd and Men Too'd, as it were, that's just my opinion based on my lived experience. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Screw off, Wasp. And, as always, I'm your host, Cipher. Thanks for watching the Devil's Advocate Debate Club. I still need to do that book review on the Drake equation. I've been thinking about a lot recently, but I really think that the person who loaned it to me wanted me to like that book. And there are things I like about it. It's hard for me to decide whether I want to go back through the book again and find all the details I didn't like, script a video, and tear it apart in something akin to CinemaSins fashion. You know, how they say they're not reviewers, they're assholes. That's kind of what I want to do to that book. But I'm more likely to, for a number of reasons, spend my time scripting a more important video. Well, maybe not more important, but a different video. And to do that one off the cuff, without being able to remember the names of half the characters or all of the events, just so I don't go into too much detail about all the reasons why I think it's kind of terrible. But anyway, that's for another video. And don't take it too hard to the person who loaned the book to me, but I hope you'll enjoy my review anyway. So anyway, that was a long PS. Thanks again for watching. Please comment below, and hey, let me know what you think my next video should be about. Have a good one.